All right, hey guys, welcome back to the Melanin Margin. I'm your host, Quaviondre Williams.
And I'm Daquon Wilson.
And this is the talk show dedicated to bringing the marginalized to the spotlight and uplift the Black voices that will no longer stay silent. So let's get into this week's race conversation. So, Daquon, do you believe that we are getting too sensitive as a culture?
I think that's a great question. I think that I kind of am of the opinion that we are going both ways. I think that we are getting more sensitive to certain things as a culture. However, I don't subscribe to the mindset that like sensitivity is something to be negative.
Mm.
Sensitivity can mean, you are a little bit more aware of like what things are happening in the world, the social locations of different people, different people's experiences. And being sensitive means you're just more perceptive to what is happening around you, to other people, and are willing to listen to other people's opinions.
Yes, I fully disagree with that idea that sensitivity is problematic or we're going too far, we're being too sensitive. I think that when it comes to where we are now, I think that people are just being more aware of
Hmm.
what they are doing and people are just not speaking up about it because we keep forgetting that we have made a really big shift in our society, not super big, but a decent shift in recognizing that some things that we have been saying for a long time are indeed problematic. And I think that what's happening, what people think, where like a lot of the right wing, very conservative people think is like this has come out of nowhere, and people are just popping off out of nowhere. It's just all of this is so new and so different. It's kind of like, well, I don't think any of this was new or different. I think it's always been there. Nobody just paid attention.
Right. It's always been here. Like
Yes, it's
racism and problematic things have always been since like the very beginning of our country. We just have platforms where we can spotlight it, show why it's wrong, and we also have the platforms to educate people on why it's wrong.
yes, and that's what I think people are getting mistaken. It's like, oh, y'all are just too PC and too this and the fourth, and it's kind of like all of the stuff that we're bringing up have always been a problem. It's always been a problem. It's just that, like you said, now we have the voice to be able to let people. Now our voices are actually being heard when we speak up about them. Gay jokes have never been funny when the punchline has been being gay. You see what I'm saying? Black
Mhm.
jokes have never been funny when the punchline is being black. You know what I mean? Like that's what people are seeing and forgetting. That like comedians are always, and I see the argument mostly from comedians like, well, I don't know what I can do. I can't say what I used to say anymore. And it's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of good that you can't say
Right.
what you say anymore, because a lot of these jokes, if you look back on some of these like comedians like popping off and like going off or whatever, some of the stuff that they've been saying are extremely racist, homophobic, transphobic. I mean, the list goes on.
Exactly. And I think it's one of those things that I feel like the field of comedy is just like interesting because they want to remain so conservative. Like, oh, I can't say this. I've been saying this all the time. But at the same time, like, if you are creative, if you are literally in any job across the world, like if you're a teacher, you can't teach the same thing the same way all the time. Like
Yes.
education evolves, how we deal with medicine evolves.
Yes.
Being a creative, like the different methods that we have to writing or coming up with stories evolve over time. So that entire question of like, oh, well, like I can't say what I used to say. Okay, evolve, literally move forward with the field and how it's going. That's natural. That's how we deal as humans.
And I kind of wanted to bring up the idea that, even even people who are quote unquote woke, which I don't really kind of like that word too much, but like, it's just the reality is when we are aware, socially aware of what is going on and what we have been saying, we realize that there is a sort of understanding that we gain as we go on. And it's like, okay, before I never understood trans lie. I understood transgender people, but like I said before, because of society's teachings and because of what we learn from television and movies and whatever, things like Ace Ventura, which is, I mean, just like, crazy when it came to trans people, and like all of these like classic men in a dress tropes and like all of this stuff that are completely problematic to trans people. Those were all the things that I was learning about them. So that's all that I knew about it. And when I had discovered or actually put myself in those environments, and then I realized that there were certain things that I didn't understand about trans people, or I didn't understand about even gay people. Like for a long time, I had used those same ideologies of like when I look at a gay girl relationship or a gay male relationship, like who's the girl, who's the boy, when I was younger. Mm-hmm. Those stringent heteronormative normative ideologies. And I didn't even realize then that that was problematic. Now, as an adult and having exposed myself to those cultures and having understood and having, asked the questions and been like, oh, wait a minute, the gay relationship doesn't have to be in heteronormative ideals. It can just be what it is. But I would have never known that had I not allowed myself to be socially aware and open. So I think there's definitely a conversation with letting people understand that you are going to make mistakes and you are going to say problematic stuff, but it's about understanding, okay, that was problematic because of X, Y, and Z. And I understand that now. I didn't understand that before.
Yeah. And kind of going off what you're saying, I noticed you were talking about just like how you've grown as a human. And I know a lot of times when, somebody gets canceled on Twitter, they got caught saying something problematic or whatever. A lot of times their excuse is always, oh, I was young and just stupid. Do you think that age could actually be an excuse for racism or other problematic mindsets or words?
That is a really good question. And I'm gonna try to really kind of say what I need to say in the best way I can say it. I think that there is a level of immaturity at an age. I do believe that minds are not fully aware of what they're saying and what they're doing at a certain age. I would say, I don't know the cutoff, but like I do think that in the below 13, 14, 15, like right at 15, I think that is, oh, this is a good question. Wait a minute, give me a second. Okay, so I think that there is definitely an understanding of immaturity. I think that is definitely the first thing we have to talk about, is the fact that we do know that we have said problematic things as kids, because that's what we're socialized to do. And I think that I've talked about this last episode, I think, but I heard this quote. There was like, you're not responsible for your first thought because of society, but you are responsible for your second thought. And I think that as a child, it is the responsibility of the parent to teach their child what to do and what not to do. But I think that at a certain point, it does fall on the responsibility of the person that is still perpetuating those same negative ideologies. For instance, there are people who grow up in homophobic households or racist households that realize at a certain point, wait a minute, this is not how I should feel about people, because they've been exposed to everything outside of it. So the way I see it is, if you are at a certain age, or you're exposed to a certain society, I feel like because you're not just raised by your parents,
right?
You're raised by multiple different things in life, especially now. I feel like back in the day, there was definitely a little more conversation like, well, you don't really know about these things, so that's why you're saying problematic things. I think the problem is when kids are not open, or kids or younger people are not open to critique, are not open to growth, if that makes any sense. Am I making sense here, Daquon?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that for me, I agree with what you were saying, especially like your last point in thinking that, I don't think I can personally come up with like a cutoff age.
Yeah, it's hard, right?
Yeah, it's hard. And everybody, like even the brain, like everybody has different paces that they mentally, developmentally, all of that. And it's one of those things that like we can't say, all right, 13
cut off. Yeah, you can't. You can't make a time stamp on it. Yeah,
exactly. So I think that there is wiggle room, because, like you were saying, a lot of it is how we're socialized. Like, I'm not going to act like I came out perfect and just like a woke or whatever, which I also kind of hate the word woke. But yeah, some of my most problematic thoughts and all of that stuff comes from like, 5th, 6th grade. But like you, I learned, and I think that's where the problem comes, because even if you're young, we grow up in a society where you have technology in your hands by the time you're like 2 or 3. You have the entire world at your fingertips by the time you're like 6 or 7. So there's not really much of an excuse because there are so many different ways you can get educated. It's not just your parents. Sure, you may grow up in a homophobic household and your parents play a big influence on those thoughts. But by the time you get to like high school, your teenage years, you have a lot more room to be able to have the freedoms of kind of creating your own thoughts, looking things up for yourself, and coming to your own ideas. You may not be in a safe spot to express those ideas to
Yes.
your parents, but you don't necessarily have to give into their ideology, especially if it's problematic.
Yeah, I think that that is, I fully agree. I think that it's, in going back to your question too, it's like you said, it's very difficult to put a specific age gap on it because we, even at 22, 20, how old am I? 22, 22? Yeah, 22. I'm 22. Lord have mercy. But even at 22, I'm still like, trying to fit. I still make mistakes. Just like in the last episode when I discovered that I still had some, messed up ideology about preference and stuff like that or whatever. Like we always grow, we always change, we always kind of evolve. And I think that when it comes to certain the big ones like racism and sexism and homophobia, I think that the way that we can check people is to say, okay, you said this then. What is your idea now? How have you grown? Not just I've changed, I've whatever. How have you grown? Tell me why. This is my thing. Tell me why you know that what you did was wrong. Don't just say what I did was wrong, what I did was unexcusable or whatever. No, go in depth as to why what your action was a problem. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that goes to back to the question I want to ask you too. Do you think that people should still be held accountable for their actions in the past?
Oh,
Regardless of
100%.
the age?
I think, when it comes to especially like social media, when you put something on a public site where everybody can see it, you should be open to criticism for whoever sees that. It's one of those things where if you said something out of line and you posted that on social media, you knew what consequences could be.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody could have a different opinion and say this and that. And if you are held accountable, you need to be held accountable regardless, because at the end of the day, racism isn't something that's new. Racism been wrong. We just haven't been talking about it the same way we're talking about it now.
Yeah, and I think that that's where it goes. I think that we're a lot of times in our society we confuse accountability with the individual, like who the person is. And I think that that's where we have the problem, because a lot of times people will say things that they don't fully understand. Now, at a certain point, it's like if you've consistently been racist, it's like, all right, y'all. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
okay, girl. It's like it's a difference between making a mistake and having something that has been a defining part of your character. Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
it's one thing to maybe have a microaggression, or maybe to mistakenly say something that might have been may have been construed as racist, or maybe it may be construed as problematic. It's okay to mistake, like it's okay to make a mistake and saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I called you she instead of he, or her, or he instead of whatever." But I think the problem is, once you know that you've made a mistake, if you continue to perpetuate that mistake, that means you haven't learned.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I think, and like I said before, when it comes to racism, whatever, it's like, it's one thing for you to have one time where you were like, oh yeah, girl, I'm a rapper with this song and say nigga. It's nothing for you to have multiple accusations about your racism throughout your social media, throughout your life, throughout your character and everything like that. And I think that that's where that shifts. It becomes less about just holding you accountable for those things and realizing, wait, this is actually a part of your character. You're gonna have to actually dig deep to figure out why the freak you made and said these things. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I 100% agree, especially on that last point. Like, if you said something that's problematic, you have to not only know that what you said was problematic, understand how you got to that point in thinking that problematic thing so that you can therefore unlearn it.
Mm, I fully, babe, you better say that shit again. You better say that one more time. One more time.
One more time, when you say something problematic, you not only need to recognize that it's problematic, but you need to figure out where that problematic thought came from so that you
Hmm.
then unlearn it.
Unlearn it. And that's what we have to do. Just like in the last episode, when I had that moment, it was about recognizing what I said and why it was problematic and understanding, okay, where did I come to that conclusion? Where did that come from? Oh, I got it now. That was problematic because of blank, blank, and blank. And that's where I feel that a lot of these YouTubers and celebrities get the mistaken, get it twisted. It's like, you can't just say, I didn't know that was wrong and be in period.
Right.
You can't just say that. I think it goes. It's taking a second step. It's that second action of like, I'm the reason why what I said was wrong, or the reason why what I did was wrong because of X, Y, and Z. This is why I was wrong. This is why I should never do this again, and this is why. And I'm glad to be held accountable for that. And that's. I want to ask you too, Daquon. Do you believe in cancel culture?
I think that cancel culture is a mixed bag. I believe in holding people accountable. I
Mm-hmm.
believe all in terms of like accountability measures. I think that the problem with cancel culture is it's become such a buzzword now. Just like the word
Yes.
woke. That's part of the reason I don't like woke is because of how people misconstrue what it means.
Yeah.
Same with cancel culture. Like it started out as a joke from a show, like, oh, she's canceled or something like that. And
Yeah.
now it's become something so much bigger. And I don't think people fully realize where the word canceled comes from and how it's being used. So everybody's just like, oh, they're canceled, cancel, cancel. And it's like, are they actually canceled? Like, there's been people who have been, you know, properly canceled. But a lot of times people say that, oh, so and so is canceled, but they're still getting tons of streaming numbers. They're still on the top of their game. They're still making all of that money. So are they actually being canceled, or are you just saying something so that you look like you're woke?
I fully agree. I do not. I completely think that cancel culture is problematic on multiple levels. And like you said before, it's a mixed bag. It's like in some instances, I understand. I just don't like the word cancel. Like I don't like that idea because we can't cancel a person. You know what I mean? But I think that there is. I prefer, like you said before, the word accountable, accountability. Accountability politics. It's like the idea of holding someone fully accountable for their actions. If their actions have been consistently this and they have not made any moves to atone for their behavior, then they should be, their brand deal should suffer. You
Mm-hmm.
know, their money should suffer because you have caused an uproar because of your racist or because of your homophobic or because of your transphobic or whatever phobic actions, and you have not made any real moves to change that behavior or to show that you have fully grown from that behavior. Bitch, you don't grow in 2 days. Okay, that's not what the fuck that is. That shit pisses me the fuck off. When you hear these people online being like, when something comes up out of nowhere, it's like, I am not that person anymore. I don't know who that was. Bitch, you said that 48 hours ago.
Right.
Like literally 48 hours ago. You did not grow and change overnight. That's not how the fuck that works. And that's what I think is my problem with it is like, people are like, oh, well, they're canceled, but they're uncanceled. It's kind of like, fuck all of that. Let's focus on holding people accountable for their actions and holding people accountable to their atonement for those actions. What are you doing to show that you not only disavow the behavior that you had, but that you will no longer do this behavior again? Because oftentimes, more often than not, these people who apologize and say, oh, I'm not going to do it again, do it again.
Exactly. And it's like, then what was the point of so-called canceling somebody? And I think that like even in, cancel culture or like you were saying, accountability culture, what we need to be moving more towards, like accountability culture has a long history. Like it's essentially boycotting. Like
Yes.
boycotting has been used to make progress. Like you can look at the civil rights movement, bus boycotts. So many times in Black people's history, when we boycotted certain things, when we were like, we're not going to go from and support this business. We're going to make our own businesses. We're going to have programs for ourselves, especially if you look at like the Black Panther Party and Black Power movements, creating things in our own community so that we don't have to go to other communities and support them and know that, hey, like, if y'all are like this, if y'all don't see us as human beings, if y'all don't give us the right of day, like a basic human decency and dignity, we're not going to support you. And those numbers are going down, and they're gonna know. They hear with their pockets, not their ears.
Baby, you better fucking preach. Daquon came to preach today. I have never heard that comparison, and that is the most perfect comparison to that I have heard to date. Canceling someone or accountability culture, that is boycotting. It's letting someone know the behavior that you're doing is not okay, and because it's not okay, we are going to take our support away from it to show you that this is not a problem. This is problematic. This is an issue, and until you change that behavior, we are going to continue to boycott or to hold you accountable. That is some shit right there. You better say that, Daquon. And that's the truth. That is what we should be doing. And I think that's what people are mistaking. It's like, well, they said they're sorry. Okay,
And
oftentimes it's never the people that have been the ones that were the result of the problem. Like, when someone says something to transphobic, it's always cisgender people going, well, they apologize. It's like, wait a minute, why are we not talking about to people who actually were the affected party? Why are we not asking them what they think? When I cannot count how many times these white YouTubers like a Shane Dawson, Jeffree Stars, and whatever, and Trisha Paytas, all these other people have been saying or doing racist things, and they're like, they release one apology video and they are absolved by the white race. And it's like, I didn't think it was your place to tell me. Like, I don't, like, I want to know how that works in a courtroom, Daquon. Like, I want to know if I can be like, that person robbed me, and then one of the other people from out, no, they didn't. They didn't rob you. It's okay. No, they said they were sorry. It's okay. It's kind of like, well, fuck my money that I lost, right? Fuck my stuff that you stole, right? And that's what you sound like when you're sitting there going, they didn't do it. Are they okay? They're not robbers, but they robbed me. But they're not robbers, so they said they were sorry. That's not how this works.
Right. Like I feel like I say this every episode, but 1 + 1 = 2. I don't know what math y'all are doing, but the math is not mathing when it comes to that. Like, at the end of the day, sure, somebody says sorry, but if you are not from the community that has dealt with whatever issue that they are projecting or perpetuating, it's not your place. Like, if you have never been called the N-word, or you've never been thrown racial or, transphobic, homophobic slurs, that's not your place to say, oh, they said they're sorry, because you have never been affected by that type of oppression, that type of discrimination.
And that's on period. I think that, and I think what really makes me upset, and I think what really shows me just how accountable these people really are, is when they do not disavow that behavior in their comment section. They do not disavow that behavior in the video. I have yet to hear any of the 3 people that I've talked about say, listen, if you are any person that is not Black, you have nothing to say about this conversation. Let Black people decide whether or not, or what I can do to make this better. What can I do to change? What can I do to do whatever? I have done the research. I have researched why what I have said is wrong, and I understand why it was wrong. What can I do to ask for your forgiveness? And if they say not shit, then you just be like, they said no. And all I can do is hope that one day I might earn it back. But the reality is, people say, I think Bob the Drag Queen said this in a Sibling Rivalry podcast I thought was really, really good, with Monet Exchange. And he was like, or she was like, when it comes to apologies, that person that you apologize to does not owe you forgiveness.
Not at all.
That is not, just because you say I'm sorry does not mean that that you are owed forgiveness. That's not how this works. Because I'm sorry makes you feel better.
Mm.
That's all it does. I'm sorry is air. And even if you do make a donation of Black Lives Matter, whatever the case be, it does not change the fact that some people are going to be like, no, I don't fuck with you no more. And that's okay.
Right. We live in a society that I feel like we always think, okay, somebody apologized, so it's somebody's obligation to forgive them. No, nobody is ever obliged to forgive somebody for something. Like, forgiveness is a crazy concept to me. I don't necessarily believe in forgiveness. I'm one of those people where, like, if you do something that's so hurtful to me that I have to basically cancel you, like, I will never be able to move around you in the same way. Like, I will always have my eye to the side, just being like, all right, what you doing now? Like, is this problematic? Like, when's the next time it's going to happen? Because as oppressed people, we've been conditioned that there are people who just always want to see us oppressed. There are people who, no matter how much we move forward, they're going to send us back a little bit. We could take 2 steps forward and they're going to make us take 1 step back, because we see it time and time again. When we think we have some type of progress, when we think we move forward as a society, another instance hits the news and it goes big, and we realize that we're not that different than the 1990s. We're not that different from the 1960s, the 1920s.
Absolutely. I fully agree. We have not shifted that much. And I think that is the problem, that people do not fully understand how to hold people accountable and how to make sure people understand that this is not okay and what they're doing is not okay. You see what I'm saying? And I think that people oftentimes, especially when we look back on people like Monique, who was blacklisted in Hollywood because of something that she was arguing for. She was fighting for Black women in Hollywood. And I have to say, in the beginning, I did not understand what she was doing. I didn't understand what she was saying. I didn't get it. But when I opened up my ears to listen to what she was saying and realized, wait a minute, she's getting a vastly different amount of money than these Black comedians and these Black male comedians and this white female comedian. And she is a legend, but she's not bringing in the same amount of money as these people. And I'm like, damn, we really dropped the ball as Black people. We would have dropped the ball and helping really make sure that Monique was given the respect that she deserved in that situation, because we were so blindsided by the fact of, it's she don't understand. It's about this, about that. And it should even blindside might be a fucking trigger word. I don't know this, but what I'm saying is, like, the reality is, like, we dropped the ball when it came to Monique. And we dropped the ball a lot when it comes to letting people know that what their behavior is or what they're doing is not okay. You know what I mean? Instead of sitting there going, Jeffree Star is this, Dress Star is that. Why are we not posting on his comment section, like, Jeffree Star has done blank, 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 and blank. This is why we do not support him. Jeffree Star is blank, blank, blank. This is why we don't support him. This is why we don't support Shane Dawson. This is why we don't support Trisha Paytas. And make sure they see that. Making sure that, oh crap, like, these people are not stopping. This is not whatever. I think that what oftentimes happens too is that cancel culture is oftentimes a blink. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like oftentimes people are canceled for maybe a few days. Maybe they trend for a day and their pockets hurt for maybe one video.
Right.
But they collect that same check back when they do their apology video. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I agree. I would say, though, the part that I do disagree with is, like, this idea of us, going to their comment sections and being like, hey, this is what you did wrong, blah, blah, blah. Because at the end of the day, they're getting a check from all those comments. They're getting the algorithm to be pushed more. You got to click on the video and give them a view in order for you to leave a comment. So I don't think that necessarily, like, showing them what's in that sense, in, like, that very verbal sense, because, like I said before, at the end of the day, we know that racism is bad. There is so much on the internet that will show you that. There is so much you can do. So I think the biggest thing is being able to be like, hey, as, like, a large collective, we are not going to support this person. We are going to take away their views. And when they see those numbers go down, when they see their ad revenue go down, when you start, instead of tweeting at him, tweeting at the companies that support him, tweeting at all of the different brands and all of those things that they have partnerships with, and they start pulling their partnerships away, or, you know, going to support like people who are not actually problematic, going to support the Black people who have been silenced, the Black people who, you know, in these situations are survivors of, you know, whatever problematic thing somebody has done, and supporting them and making sure that like we don't give them the time of day. Like, I think if you're actually canceling somebody, you don't hear from them, you don't see them, they do not exist. That is what a cancel is.
I guess I was looking at it more so from the idea of like the boycott narrative metaphor kind of thing, of being like standing on the bus or like standing outside or whatever. That's what I was kind of thinking about it. But I fully see what you're saying too, because like in this new digital day and age, you know, when you comment, regardless of what the comment says, it's still revenue. So I fully understand what you're saying. I guess it's more about, I think there's so many, like, we oftentimes see the bullying happening versus the actual successful boycotting of a situation or boycotting of a person. And I feel like our brand specifically. And I feel like that's where I get that kind of issue with. It's kind of like just trying to find other ways to do that. And I like what you're saying about the idea of like, instead of tweeting them or adding them or getting them trending, trend the people that support them. Trend the people that give them their coins, the partnerships. If Jeffree Star got a partnership with, I don't know, CoverGirl or something like that, tagging CoverGirl and be like, hey, this person did this, we need to stop this. You need to stop this. We're not going to support you anymore because you are supporting a blank, 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 and blank. Or Shane Dawson is this, and that, and the fourth. So YouTube, you know, tweeting at YouTube versus at him. So I fully understand what you're saying. That's definitely a great method. And I think that that's what we're missing in this day and age, is people who are going to discuss actual effective ways to boycott or quote unquote cancel a person or brand. I think that is the only way, like you said before, doing that thing. And I think when it comes to trying to uplift other businesses or whatever, I think that also comes from just realizing that we need to create our own spaces. Honestly and truly, that's the only way that we're going to be there, because I'm so fucking sick of this racist algorithm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of these algorithms that are mostly written by white people. Most of these companies that I've named are owned by white people. And the reality is, white, what's alike? You know, people like to support what they see. What is the most common thing? And I think that, unfortunately, because of these algorithms that are put in place, they are racist in like structurally, because they were created mostly by white people with white people in mind. And it's like, it frustrates me that when I look up, because I remember I recently just Googled, you know, like social media platforms. And I don't know about you, Daquon, but please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's one social media platform that's a major one that's actually owned by Black people. Is there?
Not that I know of.
You know, and I think that's the problem. I think that the reality is, so many of these platforms, not all of them, but most of these platforms, the most popular platforms, are usually owned by white people without the ideas or contributions of people of color. Of course, down the line, obviously, but as far as the inception of it and the algorithm that pushes it, it's all catered towards white. And I think that in order for us to fully get a better thing, why don't we have a Black YouTube? Why don't we have a YouTube that's just for Black creators, or a YouTube that's for people of color, or not call YouTube, call something else, like Vimeo or whatever it gets to be, like another streaming platform that was created with people of color in mind to support people of color. Because you will oftentimes see that there are so many YouTubers and Instagrammers and TikTokers and whatever who are doing better work than a lot of these white YouTubers and TikTokers and Instagrammers who get twice the attention for doing little to, if not below the standard, but barely anything, and they're getting the support, whereas Black creators are not. And I feel like that goes into, like I said before, creating spaces for us, because the reality is, fuck the table. I don't want the table. I want us to have our own shit, because if we have our own shit, we ain't got to worry about trying to fight for somebody to figure this shit out, because the reality is the only way that white people will notice that or will start paying attention to black people is when we leave those spaces. That's when they realize, oh shit, black people actually matter to our brands. If you notice with like when you brought up the boycotting thing, they realized that the majority of people that were taking the bus were people of color. So when people of color stopped taking the fucking bus, they realized, oh shit, we ain't getting no fucking money.
Exactly.
So if all black people banded together to create a fucking people of color platform, and all the YouTubers took all of their motherfucking content off of YouTube, YouTube might be like, oh shit, wait a minute.
They might realize that they actually have to do something to support the creators on their platform. But, getting to that question of like, why don't we have these black spaces, these black platforms? A lot of it comes down to just people like convenience at the end of the day. Like when Monique was calling for people to boycott Netflix, everybody was like, oh, I can't boycott Netflix. There's too much. What am I going to watch? When people who, survive conversion therapy camps and say Chick-fil-A is homophobic, they're donating their money to conversion camps that are terrorizing queer communities, and if people tell you not to eat at Chick-fil-A because of what they've been through, they get the response of like, oh, well, like that chicken's just so good. Like I can't get it from anywhere else. And like, girl, you could get chicken anywhere.
And
Chick-fil-A
I have
is not all that.
Yeah, and I fully agree with what you're saying. I wanted to touch on that real quick about that Chick-fil-A thing. Like I remember I used to love Chick-fil-A. I used to fucking love them fucking waffle fries, that Chick-fil-A sandwich with that Chick-fil-A sauce. It was it. It was it. And I was like, well, I don't really support what they represent, and I don't like the fact that this is what they do. And I was like, well, how hard would it be not to go to Chick-fil-A? And so I just stopped going. And I realized, hey, it's not that hard not to go there.
Get you a Popeyes biscuit.
Like, honestly, get your Popeye chicken sandwich. Like, it's not, it really wasn't as hard as I thought it was to just not go. And it's like, I think that's the problem that people have, is that like that's why a lot of these cancellations, or like, I think honestly, Daquon, I want to bring it back to this a little bit real quick, because I really want your opinion on this. But I think that if Black people or people of color, period, were to pull all of their content or pull all of their resources from these platforms or from these businesses that are not Black, or these performers that are not for Black people or not for gay people, and they all collectively would like you said before, fuck this shit, we're not doing that anymore. We've already tried to reach out to the person's not going to fix their behavior, so we're done with that person. We are not going to collectively do that. Do you think that it would make a change?
I think if there's a sustained effort to do that, yes. Because at the end of the day, people are going to hear with their pockets and not their ears, like I said before. It's one of those things that even in how we do things, like I see a whole lot of like blackouts of like, oh, for 24 hours, we're not going to do this, or we're not going to be on this platform. And I'm like, I get what you're trying to get at. Like, I get it conceptually,
Yeah.
but from a very much just practical view, not going on TikTok for 24 hours is not going to do that much to their bank accounts. It's not going to have that great of an impact. It needs to be something that is sustained, and there needs to be competition that's made. Because at the end of the day, even if you do leave and you've been gone for a while, they know they are that platform. You're going to have to go back to them if you want that type of content or that style of platform. So once there is a sustained effort to actually boycott certain platforms until they hold people accountable, and there is an effort to create our own platforms to, create spaces for marginalized voices, that's when that's when they're going to realize, hey, we need to make a change, and we need to make a big change, because otherwise we're gone. because at the end of the day, it's the Black people making all of these trends. It's the Black people who are literally building up these platforms.
And people of color that we don't even that aren't celebrated. And I think that's I really want to piggyback on what you said about the sustaining it. Sustain it. When the Black Lives Matter movement, everybody, black square, yes, Black Lives Matter. Today. They matter right now. For this hour, and for this day, and for this social media post, they matter now. But not next week. Nah, I don't really feel like doing it next week. Black Lives, whatever, next week. Or I'm gonna post my little, I donated this, blah, 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 for this one time because I support it for now, because it's convenient for me to do that now. And I think that's where we have the problem, is that we're not sustaining these cancellations. We're not sustaining these retracting our content from these things. There are so many, I cannot count how many YouTubers have left YouTube saying like, this shit ain't it, y'all. Like, they not here for us. They're not here for us. And what makes me what makes me so angry, Daquon, is the reality that they know that they are the shit. YouTube knows that you're not going no fucking where. Instagram knows you're not going nowhere. Facebook, Twitter, all these platforms know that people ain't going the fuck nowhere. That's why they haven't changed shit. All these, oh, well, we need to bring Black TikTok and the Black this and the fourth, where the case to be. The reality is, baby, they're not about to change their algorithm. The shit works for them. Their pocket, like you said, Daquon, the pockets ain't hurting.
No, not at all.
And it almost feels, it's overwhelming sometimes at how deep this racism goes and how deep you realize that, like, white people, white supremacy has marginalized us in so many different ways, and quote unquote, metaphorically speaking, enslaved us in some ways, to realize that that the Melanin Margin has to be on YouTube and on these on that. And there's no other place it can go where we'll get that kind of attention. They know that. They know that these Instagram platforms, Twitter platforms, and Facebook platforms, they know that you ain't got nowhere the fuck else to go. So they've almost mentally enslaved us to know that this is all we have. So we have to make it do. We have to make it work. And we just have to keep begging and hoping that maybe they will see us. And we know for a fact that they will not, because it doesn't affect them on the daily basis.
Exactly. Like, we can't take this show, put it on a mixtape and sell it in a parking lot somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, we theoretically could.
Yeah, theoretically.
But are we actually going to get things out? And I think that's like the biggest point, like, about going back to like having some type of competition. They know nobody's competing with us. Nobody can do it like we do it. So we don't have to. Or if it is getting problematic and, they see a slight dip, but it's not a big enough to where it makes them want to change, they'll be like, you know what? Send the Black creators some merch. Let's have a Black creators summit. Let's talk about how we hear your voices. Y'all are heard, oh, let's wait till Black History Month. Let's put out some Black History Month content, all of that. And it's like, all of that is just performative.
It's performative. It's so performative. I swear I cannot fucking stand. We stand in solidarity with. I'm like, get the fuck. I swear, Daquon.
Y'all ain't standing anywhere. Y'all are laying down asleep.
Every time I see that shit, Daquon, it makes me so upset. When I went on Netflix one time and I saw the thing that says for representation matters. Bitch, now it matters. It took y'all this fucking long to realize that representation matters? Really?
And it's the same things. They really like to cherry pick certain things, especially, social media platforms. They'll love to cherry pick certain Black creators.
Yes. And I think that's my problem, Daquon. It's like when it goes, and harkening back to our discussion and the topic at hand, it really shows just how much, even when companies say we're going to grow. Netflix, I am certain that Monique's thing with Netflix has not shifted Netflix's pockets. So they're probably still going to give Black women or Black female artists less than what they would give a Black male artist. I think that they are definitely going to give white female or white male creators way more money than they do the Black ones or the Black stories or the queer stories. They will definitely spotlight the stories that they know will make them money versus the stories that they know that people need to see. That's what's gonna happen, and they know that, and they're not gonna change. And and like you said, like I said, it's overwhelming because it's kind of like it almost makes you feel defeated.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
that we're
I think that
still having to fight. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think that defeated feeling is strong because a lot of times you think like, wow, where can I actually go? Where can I go?
Where
Everything you think can have some type of problematic thing linked to it.
And that's the tea. It's so crazy that we realize that no matter it almost seems like unless, like you said, unless we have a combined, sustained effort to all of us pull our resources from Netflix or whatever the case may be and make them change what they're doing, they're not going to do that. Unless there's a sustained effort of Black creators to be like, we're going to create our own space, we're going to create our own website or some shit that's going to have only Black stuff or people of color stuff on it. YouTube is not going to change their algorithm. Instagram is not going to change their algorithm. TikTok is not going to change their algorithm because their algorithm works. It makes them money, so they're going to keep doing what they've been doing. That's the tea. And it's hard to realize that, like, it's hard to realize that in this situation, in this world that we live in, like I said, we are so accustomed or used to not getting anything as Black people or as people of color that even when we do fight, it doesn't seem to do anything. It doesn't change anything because we're still asking YouTube to spotlight Black creators. We are still asking Instagram, still asking TikTok, still asking Twitter to be like, these people are problematic. They need to be taken down. Their content is problematic. It needs to be taken down. There is a full white comedian on Netflix who done said nigga many times in her set for no reason. And I'm like, and she's still there? Right. They haven't put a warning or something on it that says, hey, this person is blank, blank, and blank, or whatever. We don't have none of that. Fuck us, right?
Not a warning. Take it down.
Or yeah, you're right.
I ain't want that warning.
Pull that shit immediately. But yeah, but I'm just in like even in that situation, just right now, like the fact that I would even settle for just taking just a warning at the very least. And I'm like, isn't that sad that we have gotten to the point now where we're just like the smallest concession, we're like, we won.
Right.
We did something, girl, because it's Black History Month, so they're doing Black History Month stuff. We did it this month.
Then March it.
And it's, who is that? Black people. Who is that? I don't know her. Mm-mm. Like, it's just crazy to me. So I just want to ask you, Daquon, to kind of round off this conversation, how do you feel, or what do you feel is the makings of a fortified, solid apology?
I think a solid apology. First of all, you have to recognize, like we were saying before, you have to recognize that something's problematic. You have to recognize why it's problematic. You have to recognize how you got to those problematic thoughts. And in that, you can't use that as an excuse. You can't be like, I came to these thoughts because that's how it is, blah, blah, blah. Like, no. You got to recognize where it comes from, but that cannot be your excuse. It can be an explanation, not an And you also have to show how you have grown. You can't say, I'm a different person now. How are you a different person now? What are you doing that makes you so different? How do we know that you would never do that again? How can we ensure that you are making sure that your platform does not stand for this? Because a lot of times these people will say that they apologize, and then they have their defenders in the comments being like, oh, they apologize, get over it, blah, blah, blah. And those creators are liking those comments and showing that, you know what, this is what I want. They're showing that they have not actually moved on. They just want their money back. They just want their platform back. So you need to show how you are creating an absolute platform where people can feel like they have spaces and that they can be who they are in those spaces using your platform, you need to make sure that, you know, you are you adding some action behind that, because what you're saying is not enough. I'm sorry. Like, you have this huge platform, you can donate some of those funds to places, and not just like a one-time donation. You got to make sure you do your due diligence in making sure who you're donating to. Don't just look up Black charities and be like, I donated to Black Lives Matter. Like, have a strategic vision on what you're going to be doing and make a sustained effort to use your platform to uplift other communities and basically pay reparations for what you did. And after all of that, you're not guaranteed your platform back.
Mm,
Don't act entitled to your platform, because
mm.
at the end of the day, what I'm saying is not a checklist for you to go, okay, I did all of this, I'm good. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. Like, everybody else is going to have their own ideas of forgiveness. I have my own ideas of
Mhm.
forgiveness. Like, that is for me to know. And you don't need your platform back just because you did a good apology. Like, I've seen some really good apologies, but at the end of the day, I'm just like, is this something sincere? Were they going down a checklist, crossing their T's and dotting their I's? They got a PR statement to read off? Or is this actual change? Is this actual growth?
I feel like I fully agree. I feel like when it comes to apologies and when it comes to certain acts, not all of them, because this is not a uniform for everything. There are certain things that are way too egregious to be just apologizing for. Sorry,
Sure.
baby, that's not how this works. But I think that first and foremost, you can't keep apologizing. Number one, you can't apologize for saying something crazy and then the same shit that you got in trouble for the last time, you're apologizing for again and saying it's not going to happen again. You can't make 5 apology videos for the same thing over time. That means that you aren't learning, baby.
You're
That's
right.
what that means. I feel like the cornerstone of a good apology, I think, is about rehabilitation in the situation. I think that apologies are about taking ownership, full ownership of what you did. Saying, this is what I said, this is what I did. I think a lot of these YouTubers will be like, I said some things, but no. You need to say, yes, I said the N-word this amount of times in this video. I did this that was blackface or whatever in this video. I did this and then the fourth, and list off every fucking thing that you did. It's not our job to tell you what you did because you know what you did. So just say, this is what I did. I said that. I said that. Again, like we talked about earlier, your trauma explains your actions, but it does not excuse your actions. It is not an excuse, it's an explanation. There's a difference. So you can say, well, I was going through some things, but that is not an excuse. Depression didn't make me racist.
Mm-mm.
Borderline personality disorder for me did not make me a transphobic. That's not, there's not an equivalency there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I feel like in that situation and understanding, taking ownership of your actions first, making a video or making a statement to say, listen, this is what I did, and I completely own what I did because I said what I said. I said what I said, and it was wrong as fuck what I said. I think the next step in that apology is taking accountability for the backlash of your action. So not just saying, I said what I said and that was fucking wrong, but also understanding that people have the right to be upset at what you said. And allow those people's voices to be heard. Do not silence those voices because they make you uncomfortable. Because I wonder how they felt. Are you uncomfortable, baby? You uncomfortable, baby? I wonder how they felt when you said it or when you did it. So whenever you feel yourself going, oh, I don't, they're saying all these things about me being racist and forth, because you are. Because you did this. You did that. And you would too for, let me stop. But you did that. You did that and understand that you did that. And I think that honestly, I know people don't do this before, but if you can, I always feel like you should have a conversation with the oppressed party that you offended. So if you offended a trans person or trans people, have a trans person discuss what you did with you. If you offended Black people, and this is again, not to have that person on as tokenism or to say, oh, this person makes me whatever feel. No, get the highest voicing opinion and let them speak on what you did, because it's not their job to teach you why what you did was wrong, but it is I believe it could be helpful to say, listen, I offended the Asian community. So I'm gonna have an Asian person on this platform explain, tell y'all also why this is wrong. Because now I've learned why it's wrong. I want them to also educate other people about it as well. And let them understand that my action was wrong. But I know my action is wrong because of blank, blank, and blank. And they're gonna sit here and say, yes, that was wrong because of blank, blank, and blank. Give that, like you said before, give that platform, give these people a platform. If you offended Black people, spotlight Black creators on your YouTube channel. If you offended trans people, spotlight trans performers and spotlight trans issues.
And don't expect them to be obliged to actually work with you.
Thank you. And say, if anyone's available, if no one wants to be available, they have that right to do so. And I think after you have done that, I think that it goes to checking your followers, checking your supporters and saying, listen, what I did was wrong. What I did, I'm holding ownership for and I'm taking accountability for. Let the people that are upset with me be upset with me. They have every right to be mad at me because what I said was transphobic, racist, homophobic, sexist. What I did was homophobic, transphobic, racist, sexist, whatever in betweens. I did what I did. I said what I said. Let me be a grown woman, a grown man, a grown non-binary person to handle that shit myself. You do not have to defend me because I don't deserve to be defended right now. I deserve to learn, to open up my ears, to understand. That's what my job is right now. So that's the next step, is not to try to defend yourself. Stop trying to defend your action if you know, if there is absolute proof that what you did was wrong. If there is undeniable proof that what you did was wrong, defending yourself is not gonna fix it.
It's not.
It's only gonna make things worse. And last but not least, the last step is understanding that there are two steps that can happen next. There are two options. You may be able to be rehabilitated and be able to get your brand back and able to make a change and to gain that forgiveness. Maybe, depending on the severity of the action. It's quite possible. But also to understand that you may not, like you just said, not get your platform back at all. And that is a viable reaction to that, and understanding that, yes, that is okay. If you don't support me anymore, I fully understand, because you have every right to do so. And I think that that's the cornerstone of a good apology, is understanding that you do not deserve to be forgiven. You want to be forgiven.
You hope to
You hope. You hope to be forgiven. And if your action, if your atonement has not proven worthiness of forgiveness, there's nothing to be said. The only way that I feel like YouTube is going to atone for their actions against people of color is by spotlighting all people of color, changing their algorithm, making a systemic effort within their system to say, we are going to start making sure that all people of color, everybody, is having the same support as the other ones.
And sustaining that.
And sustaining that support, not just for a day or for a week or for a month, making actual systemic change. It does not mean that we excuse what you've done in the past, but we are seeing that you are really rehabilitating yourself for the future. But that does not mean that you might not lose all your creators. You see what I'm saying? But anyway, hey. So I think we have reached the end of this conversation. Daquon, you have anything to say about this particular topic?
No, not at all.
I think we covered that shit, bitch.
Right.
So many children grow up never knowing the full scope of what their culture has contributed to society and history. So it's time for a change. Let's take a pause, rewind, and remind the world just how we did that. So, in the article, Little Known Black History Facts, written by PBS, we discovered that the first licensed African-American female pilot was named Bessie Coleman. Born in Atlanta, Texas in 1892, Bessie Coleman grew up in a world of harsh poverty, discrimination, and segregation. After she moved to Chicago at 23, she heard tales of flying exploits from returning World War I soldiers that inspired her to explore aviation. But as an African American and a woman, there wasn't much opportunity for her to pursue her dream. So she set her sights on France, and in 1920, Coleman crossed the ocean with all of her savings and the financial support from Robert Abbott, one of the first African-American millionaires. Now, over the next 7 months, she learned to fly, and in June 1921, the Federation of the International Aeronautic awarded her the International Pilot's License. Now, when she did return to the United States, reporters were clamoring to meet and interview with her. Now, Coleman performed at numerous air shows over the next 5 years, performing stunts and encouraging other African Americans to pursue flying and refusing to perform where Black creators or Black people were not admitted. Now, when she tragically died in a plane accident in 1926, the famous writer and equal rights activist Ida B. Wells presided over her funeral. An editorial in Dallas Express stated soon after her death that there is a reason to believe that the general public did not completely sense the size of her contribution to the achievements of race as such. Now, that story is very specific to this conversation because I really like the fact that she had said that she did not perform where Black people were not allowed. And I thought that was a really big move of hers because she was it at that point in time. And she was like, if y'all not gonna let Black people in here, we're not gonna be here. So that really harkens back to what we were talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
So baby, like she said, baby, I said Black credits. I meant to say Blacks, y'all, but I was like, I felt that shit when she did that. I felt that in that moment. I was like, yes, bitch, we don't do that, baby. We don't support people who don't support us. So
exactly, people like Bessie Coleman, Josephine Baker, Nina Simone, all of them. We might need to spotlight them again, but March is Women's History Month, so let's talk about another amazing Black woman. Credit to blackpast.org for this biography. So today we'll be talking about businesswoman and entertainer Gertrude Ma Rainey, known as the Mother of Blues, was the most popular blues singer/songwriter of the 1920s. She is considered to be the first woman to introduce the blues into her performances. In 1904, Ma married her husband, William Pa Rainey, and the duo eventually became known as Ma and Pa Rainey, the assassinators of the blues. As a single woman, though, she established her own entertainment company in 1917 called Madame Gertrude Ma Rainey and her Georgia Smart Set, and after a successful career in vaudeville, managed theaters in her home state of Georgia. After nearly 20 years of dramatic performances on stage, Rainey signed a contract with Paramount Records in 1923, only 3 years after the first blues recording was produced. She recorded nearly 100 records between 1923 and 1928 with a wide variety of the best contemporary musicians, including a young Louis Armstrong. During this period, she continued to travel and perform across the South and occasionally in Chicago, where she recorded. Ma was still performing in the early 1930s, but after officially quitting the show business in 1935, she returned to Columbus, Georgia to run 2 entertainment venues and participate in church activities.
absolutely. And that goes back to creating Black spaces.
Amen.
Period. And I think that these stories are so impactful and so important because in these situations, we are seeing that this has always been a problem. This has always been a problem. This is why we created this segment, to recognize and let people know that this shit ain't new. This shit been did what it is, you know. And I think that people keep forgetting that this stuff still affects us to this day, that we still have to say we need to be in a place, or we're not going to perform in a place where Black people are not allowed. And even though it may not be explicitly stated in these terms and conditions of these websites, let's be real, it's essentially saying Blacks aren't allowed. In colorful language and in colorful algorithms, that's exactly what they're doing. and taking a page from Ma Rainey's book to know that in order for us to really find some success, in order for us to really try to change some shit, is to create our own spaces. Instead of trying to sit at somebody else's table, we build our own fucking table.
Right. Because at the end of the day, no matter how many seats you have at that table, if somebody owns that table, it's not yours.
And that's what we're going this episode on right here. Say that one more time, Daquon, with people in the back.
No matter how many seats you have at a table, if you do not own that table, it is not yours.
That is on period. Thank you guys and ladies and non-binaries so much for watching and listening to the Melanin Margin as a podcast and as a talk show on YouTube. As always, please keep the conversation going down in the comment box below. We do read, we do respond, and we want to hear your own viewpoints about apologies and sensitivity and PC culture. So please comment down below. Don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts at. Make sure you share. Make sure you keep the conversation going, y'all. And like I said before, don't forget to follow us. Mine is at Quaviondre and at Andre Talks a Lot. Daquon is at Daquon950. And I think that we are at the end of this episode. Thank you guys so much. And we will see you next week with a brand new episode, baby. Bye.